So we have our first speaker is going to be Dave Coffman from Resource Environmental Solutions, talking about dam removal. Brief overview.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How's this room audio sounding? Good? Okay. Start off with a little interactive exercise. Who in the room, and Randy gave a nice gracious opening to dam removal. It's been a large project, a huge effort by a lot of folks for many years. And a lot of those folks are here in this room. So who in this room, in some way, shape, or form, has worked on the dam removal project in one capacity or another for at least the past 2 years? Okay, everybody, take your time, have a look around. Randy's flagging me down. He's not raising his hand. No, we're good? Okay, 5 years. 7 years. 10 years. Hands aren't moving. 15. 20. Thank you. Without the long-term dedication from these folks who have been through, I can't even tell you how many ups and downs over the course of this project, I would not be able to stand up here to tell you about dam removal on the Klamath and a little bit about the fish that have returned past where these dams used to be. So Randy, again, thanks for having me. I will move as quickly as possible. That is not accurate. So I have 20 minutes to go through way too many slides, but generally just focusing on the past 2.5 months of project activities. If we go longer than that, it would take an entire day. So this is just a general status update on all things, and I apologize in advance for reading from this slide. The full dam removal, and we're calling it volitional fish passage channel construction. So the reshaping of the channel beneath the dam footprints is complete. Kiewit, the dam removal contractor, has demobilized off the site at JC Boyle and Copco dams and should be done fully demobilizing by the end of the week, kind of putting a nice endpoint to the dam removal chapter of the dam removal project. We are advancing upland and reservoir restoration at JC Boyle, Copco No. 1, Reservoir, Copco Lake, and Iron Gate, and I'll get into some more details as we go on what that specifically looks like. KRC is advancing upland restoration at Copco No. 1 and Iron Gate. When I say upland restoration, those are the upland construction disturbed areas such as disposal sites, access roads, and so on. These are the dates when all the things happened. And these dates are important when it comes to water quality for this group. And Caitlin's going to give a nice presentation after this on some more specifics associated with the water quality signatures seen throughout dam removal, with some emphasis on what was seen during the cofferdam breaches that are highlighted here. So the JC Boyle cofferdam breach was a very short-lived event, just like the draining of that reservoir was earlier this year. It was completed towards the end of July of 24. Copco No. 1 dam, the cofferdam breach, was completed on the 11th of September. It was initiated, both Copco No. 1 and Iron Gate were initiated on the 28th of August and went through kind of this stepped cofferdam breach sequence that I'll talk about in some more detail with some photos as we go. And then with the Iron Gate cofferdam breach being completed on the 2nd of October with full removal of that cofferdam embankment and a temporary access bridge. That's what opened up the river for fish to cruise on upriver and get as far as at least the Keno Dam. And I see some colleagues maybe from ODF&W in here that may know some more about fish, and we'll maybe hear from them, if not today, tomorrow. I'm pleased to say the project schedule was exceeded. And so where my cursor is right now is the month of November. We're intending this project schedule, which was developed earlier in the year, intended for facilities removal activities to continue through November. What you'll see here, and what I previously mentioned, those facility removal activities are completed and the dam removal contractor is off-site. Reservoir and tributary restoration, though, you'll see extending out through 2025 and into, well, that's our construction season is 2025, but our performance guarantee and monitoring and maintenance period extends through at least 2031. So now to the photo portion of the project. You see here, this structure here was the cofferdam at J.C. Boyle. The dam footprint was here. This is the removed dam footprint. This gate structure was constructed during the initial dam building phase as a way to route water around the earth and embankment portion of the dam construction site. Water was routed through this until that cofferdam breach date, which the water was released back into the former alignment of the Klamath River main channel through that former dam footprint. And by, I'd say midday that day, 100% of the flow of the Klamath River was being routed through the main stem. Then Kiewit proceeded to remove this gate structure and rebuild, or just kind of cover things up and rebuild this hillside. So this is just another view of the same time period where water's coming down. You can see partial flow through the low-level outlet tunnels and a little bit coming through the cofferdam breach. You can see the breach right there above my cursor. And here it is about a month. What is that? Yeah, a month or two later, where the contouring's been finished. The dam and cofferdam have been completely removed. These are straw wattles for erosion sediment control. This area you see down here in the bottom right of this photograph was a stockpile area where the dam removal contractor removed a substantial amount of accumulated reservoir sediment from just upstream of the dam and placed it here. And then our teams are currently out moving that material and spreading it out across disturbed upland areas like the former dam footprint here, the power canal, the scour hole, the penstock, the former penstock hill slope, the powerhouse, to provide growing medium for the vegetation reestablishment that's currently underway. Another view, just kind of looking upstream at things or around this horseshoe bend. One more view. This is the timber bridge. The former dam site was just up here off the photo. This is where the water used to come across out of the dam, was right in through here to enter the power canal and be brought on downstream to the power generation facilities. Boat ramp has been constructed up at J.C. Boyle. And here you can see beginning to stockpile some of that sediment, reservoir sediment or topsoil material for resurfacing this construction access road. This is where the power canal was formerly located, and that's providing that growing medium again for vegetation reestablishment. Here's the scour hole in its nearly restored condition. We've since seeded and hydromulched that entire hill slope. Here is looking uphill to downhill. This is where the penstocks used to run. This is where the powerhouse was formerly located. This was the tail race. And you can see here the topsoil or the reservoir sediment beginning to get spread out. Because of the steepness of slopes, we're using helicopters to fly on seed and hydromulch at those facilities. Just another shot looking down at the work area. Now on the Copco number 1. So the Copco number 1 cofferdam breach, as I said, was started on August 28th. Here with a small breach, water was flowing through the diversion tunnel and the breach at the same time. Here you can an upstream look at the breach. Here, the breach location was here where my cursor is pointing. Kiewit then constructed an access road so they could backfill the openings, the orifices to the upstream end and the downstream end of the tunnels. And then this access road was removed on its way out to leave this site. This is where the former Copco 1 dam was located. This is the outlet portal for that diversion tunnel. This is where the Copco number 1 powerhouse was situated. The Copco #2 dam was over here. Remember, that one was removed in the summer and fall of 2023. This is the disposal site. So all the material that was formerly in this dam is now under this capped disposal site at the top of the hill. The Renewal Corporation is currently undertaking a process to harvest reservoir sediment from the former Copco Lake footprint, transport it up here to top this facility and get vegetation established. Just another shot of the former dam footprint. This is a view looking upstream from the former powerhouse location. This lighting's not the best, but that feature right there is the downstream tunnel portal closure. Looking downstream from that same spot. Looking upstream from a little bit closer. So again, tunnel portal closure. Here is the former left abutment of the dam. We're looking upstream. Tunnel portal closure. And then here is just an example of one of the upland areas that's being currently restored by the Renewal Corporation and a separate contractor. This is the disposal site in the background. There was for folks who spent any time on the site, this is where the blue house sat, upstream or up the hill from Copco #1. Overhead view of the disposal site. And on to Iron Gate. So Iron Gate, keeping in mind that schedule of, or that sequence of events that I described with the cofferdam breaching, there was sediment accumulated behind J.C. Boyle Dam and the Copco #1 cofferdams. When those were breached, Iron Gate was still fairly in place, right? So there was still an opportunity for sediment attenuation. Randy mentioned some impacts to dissolved oxygen from sediment releases during the Iron Gate cofferdam breach. And these couple of photos, I'm going to talk about the sequence of events during those cofferdam, or during that Iron Gate cofferdam breach. And so this is August 28th, and this was the initial cofferdam breach. Now, J.C. Boyle, the way the cofferdam breach at J.C. Boyle was described and always intended was to be an uncontrolled breach, where the contractor would notch the cofferdam and the river would wash it away. That was always the plan. The plan here at Iron Gate was for a controlled cofferdam breach because the contractor still needed to access the far side of the river to take out this little gem, the gatehouse for the former diversion tunnel. And so this controlled breach included rock lining a breach channel on the bed and the banks. In one of the next photos, you'll see a bridge across that breach. But both this initial breach and the final breach resulted in some sediment discharges to the lower river. Now, for anyone who is paying attention to the sequence of events during the drawdown period, like Randy mentioned, there was a series of dissolved oxygen events during the early stages of reservoir drawdown. And the best that anyone's been able to come up with is that the dissolved oxygen sags were caused by a fairly high chemical oxygen demand. Liam's here, and he can correct me if I get this wrong. A fairly high chemical oxygen demand in some pretty funky reservoir sediment upstream of Iron Gate Dam that was only mobilized at the absolute lowest reservoir elevations, which remained, the reservoir remained in place in some way, shape, or form due to capacity constraints at the low level outlet at Iron Gate. Everybody still following? Okay. The only time we saw those DO sags was when that really low elevation sediment was interacting with the outlet flow through that tunnel. And so then so after those first initial DO sags and sediment pulses, went through a series of flows, then through the summer, and weren't seeing DO issues. And it wasn't until the cofferdam breach where, again, those lowest elevation sediments appear to have been engaged by the river as it was dropping down through that cofferdam breach. And that, again, that high chemical oxygen demand sediment entrained by the river flushed downstream. And so hopefully these pictures start to tell the story, but you saw the cofferdam breach in the previous slide, which here, that's the breach day. This photo is 10 days later or so, and you can see the temporary access road bridge coming across, and this breach being held in place. And I think, you know, everyone saw the former reservoir sediments that some were initially brought out because of the rapid drop in water surface elevation, and some came out a little more slowly as we started to see in geotechnical slope failures of this reservoir sediment towards the flowing water in the river. And then this configuration stayed in place for a few weeks while the dam removal contractor worked on finishing the cofferdam material removal and removal of the intake structure. So this is a view looking upstream, and here is a picture of some of that real nasty sediment. Now, recognizing how rough some of this stuff was on the downstream environment, the Renewal Corporation brought in a long-reach excavator and started the process of trying to hog out quite a bit of the sediment mechanically to remove it from the available sediment source for downstream transport. This is looking upstream at the same stuff. This is looking upstream from that Jimba Bridge, and you can see the elevated water surface up here. This is looking downstream from the ridge. So this was the low-level outlet tunnel. I guess maybe that was backed up a little bit. This feature right here was the downstream end of the spillway. This is looking downstream from a point downstream of the crest of the dam. Here's looking up, and that's a cofferdam removed photo. So this is post cofferdam removal. We no longer have that elevated water surface elevation coming through that former dam footprint. This is the location of the former riser structure for the diversion tunnel, which I'm going to back up to here. And so the dam footprint pretty well started here and came downstream. That large sediment deposit that I pointed out in the earlier photo had been sitting in this location here. Another view looking upstream, reservoir sediments, exposed reservoir sediments, and the access road that was used to haul all that dam material up to the disposal site on top of the hill. Just a photo trying to reclaim or working on reclaiming some of those haul roads back into more natural contours. Another view looking downstream. This is the new Lakeview Bridge down here in the background for location reference. Again, grading this upper haul road to kind of blend the topography back into the more natural hillside. This is the disposal site that the Renewal Corporation is currently, again, topping. When Kiewit built the disposal site, they took all the pre-existing topsoil material, scraped it off to one side. And so the Renewal Corporation is now spreading that material back out on here and then using a lot of that reservoir sediment that they were able to pull out of the former reservoir footprint to finish topping it to get vegetation established on it. Final grading, so you got a new mountain out there in Siskiyou County if anybody down the road feels like taking a hike. Well, so that was dam removal. And if I'm not incredibly over time, which I am, I'll move quickly on the restoration components of the project. So our crews have been out doing seedbed preparation for about 2 months. The fall seeding, when I say seedbed preparation, the activity correlates to preparing the seed bed for planting, like any farmer would do in an agricultural setting. You don't go out there and just sling seed on an unprepared soil surface and expect super high success. And especially what we got some photos of a couple of spots on Copco Lake yesterday where the cracks in the reservoir sediment are 2 to 3 feet across and 5 feet deep. So we're running equipment over that reservoir sediment to break it up to try to create a more suitable planting medium. The Yurok tribe seeding crew has been working around the upper reservoir rims, doing hand seeding in places where the vegetation took really well after the initial seeding, and we didn't really want to touch or see a need for seedbed prep. The remainder of JC Boyle was hit with a native seed drill to get that seed embedded in that prepared surface. Copco and Iron Gate are underway with both seedbed prep activities and seeding and planting. There's been a whole lot of work done on spawning surveys in the main stem Klamath River and tributaries. the restoration design is not finished yet, right? We have an obligation to do restoration on Camp and Scotch Creek and Jenny Creek in the former Iron Gate footprint, Beaver Creek in the Copco footprint, and now some monitoring of more of a process-based restoration approach at Spencer Creek up in J.C. Boyle. And so our design crews are out there this week doing field walks to check, try to field check the next phase of design that's been completed using aerial data, post drawdown topographic data collected aerially by the Yurok tribe. DJ, I've lost the name of the group. Condor Aviation, thank you. Fish passage surveys, one of the other obligations RES has taken on is guaranteeing fish passage throughout the project area. As we've seen with fish everywhere, passage doesn't really appear to be an issue at the moment. And then, of course, continued water quality monitoring that Caitlin's going to touch on here soon. This is a photo of some of the seedbed preparation activities. So this is a D3, a Cat D3 dozer. It's pulling behind it what's called a Lawson renovator, or in newer terms, a Ranch Works aerator. And that piece of equipment is about 10 feet wide, has big steel drums with spikes on it. And like you might aerate your lawn, it does that just on a much larger scale. And so you can see here, this is unrun or unprocessed reservoir bed sediment. This is what's beside it. This is stuff that the renovator's already touched. We found that one pass with a renovator and two passes with a cultipacker gets that material about as good as it can possibly get to receive seed. Here's that implement in action at J.C. Boyle. Here's some folks having way more fun than the guy running the dozer. Fish passage surveys, res and crew staff. Here's another one. I mean, not a bad way to spend the day. I don't get invited. Just saying. But here's Copco Lake. This is back in September. This is a view looking downstream, former Copco Lake footprints, checking on restoration. Another one looking upstream, and of course, just for this is prior to any seedbed prep work being done. This is all the results of the seeding effort that was done collaboratively between the Yurok tribe and RES back in early 2024. Another one. Jenny Creek, I'm going to skip through these pretty quick. Jenny Creek's an area where we did assisted sediment evacuation, but no active revegetation work. All these red willows came in on their own this year. And then we're getting into some pretty exciting stuff. Keep your eye on that. There, here were the first Chinook that were observed in in Jenny Creek following drawdown. So we had that cofferdam breach in early October. A few days later, fish were finding their way to Jenny Creek, and it's just been a steady stream of fish since then. And with that,
we got time for a few questions. You can keep it on now.
I will. Mike does.
Sorry. For the benefit of folks in Zoom.
Hey, Dave, great presentation. Just wondering, are you going to be doing any spawning gravel supplementation anywhere on the project?
So the question, if anybody over here didn't hear it, was, are we doing any supplemental gravel placement work on the project? And the answer is maybe. One of the requirements for the project was you recognizing that dam removal, or the drawdown activity was going to release quite a bit of sediment that was going to impact spawning reds in the main stem river. There was an obligation to monitor for spawning habitat for both coho and steelhead. And that work has been ongoing, monitoring kind of what became exposed following drawdown. Things got a little slow for a while as turbidity maintained or stayed high during those cofferdam breaches. I don't know that we fully wrapped up those surveys, but depending on the outcome of those surveys, if what was exposed under the former reservoir footprints or within the newly accessible tributaries meets the objection or meets the obligation of the performance criteria, which is a certain amount of square feet of spawning habitat, we won't place any gravel. If for some reason there's not as much spawning habitat uncovered as what we're anticipating, we will do some supplemental placement work.
All right, and last question, since we are a little bit behind.
Can you explain a little more about your restoration efforts on Spencer, Beaver, and Scotch Creek? Are those ephemeral streams, and why did you choose additional restoration on those tribs?
The question was, explain a little bit more about restoration on Spencer, Beaver, and Scotch Creeks, ephemeral, or what's the flow regime and why were those chosen? So Beaver appears to be perennial in its lower reaches, at least as of 6 months worth of data. Camp Creek has, again, some lower perennial flow, but those are mostly been identified for either spring run or spring steelhead streams. Probably don't have the flow that is going to be needed for fall run Chinook. But they were identified as being historic salmon producing streams. So prior to the dams being placed, prior to the reservoir impoundment, those were known to support anadromous fish. So they're big tributaries with a lot of length within the former reservoir footprints. The work at Spencer Creek up at J.C. Boyle so far, I've mentioned kind of a process-based or passive restoration where we placed quite a bit of wood and are waiting to see through at least 1 year of natural flow how the former reservoir sediments that are causing that stream to be a little over widened and shallow, how they work with the wood that we've placed to create a more appropriate channel form through that restoration footprint. Most of the work on the other tributaries, Beaver, Jenny, Camp, and Scotch, are going to focus on floodplain reconnection, which turns out those streams were pretty well in size prior to reservoir impoundment. So we're looking at floodplain reconnection and habitat enhancement for those tributaries. I will be around probably through lunch today. If anyone else has questions and would like to catch up, I look forward to chatting. Thanks.